Okay, let's begin. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, good day or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are at this time. As you can see, the subject matter is something called COVID. I'm going to take off my mask so that you'll hear me better. Okay, so I'm Rory Moore, co-founder and CEO of EvoNexus. EvoNexus is California's leading nonprofit technology incubator. We enable entrepreneurs to turn transformative ideas into fundable, commercially viable companies. In the last 10 years, we've launched over 240 startups that have raised over $2 billion in capital. And many of these startups are in the area of life science and MedTech. So a lot of the companies that we incubate are relevant to the discussions we're going to have today. Prior to creating EvoNexus, I was a serial entrepreneur. I was very fortunate to found companies that develop products all of us on this call use every day. Now I've got your attention, right? One of my ventures was Silicon, a startup that produced the world's first Bluetooth chips. That company is now owned by Qualcomm. The subject of Bluetooth is a terrific segue to the subject of our discussion today on COVID contact tracing. Like many foundational technologies, Bluetooth continues to find important use cases that matter and touch all of our lives. In partnership with Futurewei, a longtime partner of the EvoNexus incubator, we have developed a compelling webinar that addresses solutions that will impact our most important asset, our youth. Not a day goes by where there is not an announcement. Sorry, lost the track. Where there's not an announcement regarding our education system and the challenges it faces with the pandemic. The professors on our call today will expose everyone, no pun intended, to important solutions that leverage the benefits of contact tracing to help flatten the pandemic curve. Thank you for all of your efforts creating this program. Everyone on the call has an opportunity to ask our panel questions following their presentations. Please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We will select questions that are most relevant to the entire group. Let's begin with Dr. Ahmad-Reza Sadeghi, who is calling in from Darmstadt, Germany, near Frankfurt, and I know it's the evening time there. So thank you for joining us during your evening hour. Ahmad, take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rory, for the kind introduction and also pointing out to the core problems that we are going to talk about today. So Farinaz, Koushanfar from UC San Diego and I have been working on contact tracing since at least January 2020, as the problem was getting bigger, the pandemic problem. And we would like to share with you the outcome of our research and also different aspects that we can discuss in this short time. Of course, there will be some time for Q&A, but in general, I'll just give you a high-level idea of what we have been doing. So I think most of you know about pandemic. I think, and I hope that there is nobody who doesn't know about this pandemic. So it's a worldwide problem. If you look at it from a computer scientist or engineer point of view, you know, social distancing is not something very unknown to us, but to many other people, social distancing is something very difficult and maybe even existential. So all conferences are canceled, at least depending on how different countries reacted to this pandemic. Some were very slow, some were very fast. And even when they got a bit more smooth and looser, and then they got a second wave of the problem. And of course, in the US, we are looking very concerned towards the situation in US. On the other hand, many studies in the recent studies show that when families get together, sometimes they are tearing apart because they are not used to sit so tight with each other, especially when they have kids at home and the kids cannot go to school. Or some families, they even get to know each other better than before. So there are different kind of studies and results on this new way of life. Now, I just want to show you an announcement of, for example, Commissioner of Health in Chicago in the time of a big influenza, that means in the time of 1918, where millions of people died due to influenza. And as you see in these two pictures, you don't, we really, we're not having something really novel. All the suggestions and recommendations at that time are also valid today. And it's amazing that we really don't see massive changes, although time has changed a lot. And also here you see the suggestion for protecting yourself are the same as it was in 1918. But what was important at that time, and maybe we can change here, is, and with the help of technology, is contact tracing. And what does it mean? Contact tracing is that all the epidemiologists and health experts, they need to identify the infection chains. They need to find out who has contact with whom, so that they can find out who has the high risk of being infected, or they start with testing very early phases that they do not overload the medical systems. So we know that no country really was ready for that. And although we had many estimations and tests every year, simulation of pandemic, these results of scientists have been ignored. Now, why is that contact tracing now, when you do it manually, is very difficult? Because in many cases, it is very cumbersome and error prone, like in public transportations, in indoor situations, so you can't really remember with whom you had contact. And as an example, in Munich, in Germany, it was the first cases appeared in Munich, and they were really a low number of cases, and there was a kind of panic that it gets spread very fast. So they started to recruit a huge number of medical students and retired physicians to do the manual testing. They were very successful, but it was also extremely hard to get to that result that they had. They wanted to have it a more efficient and effective way. So this is where technology comes in. And for myself, I had my own experience with pandemic as I came back from China in December 2019. I came with a number of ideas because I heard what is happening in China, especially because I have good contacts to Wuhan, where it was an epicenter. So I was thinking how we can help as technologists, as computer scientists. So I started to talk to many colleagues all over the world. And we heard, of course, from Chinese contact tracing, from Singapore contact tracing, Vietnam, and other Asian countries, especially South Korea. And so a technology that was used there is Bluetooth technology. That I'm going to talk about, not about the Bluetooth, but how you can use it for contact tracing. And indeed, Bluetooth low energy gives us a number of opportunities to kind of register these contacts between people. And Rory is one of the pioneers in this area. His company has shipped the first chip with Bluetooth. So we have a kind of source in our panel. However, when this Bluetooth technology, the question is it working for every device? And indeed, as most of you know, it is really available on almost every device, especially in the case of when we talk about Internet of Things. So it could be on wearables, it could be on smartphones, depending on what kind of application you are using. Bluetooth is a very popular technology. And by using this technology, you can measure, for example, the distance and the duration of contact between two people. This technology allows you to collect these parameters which are important for following the infection chains or do the contact tracing. And I'm just showing it in a very simplified manner. And you can have, of course, based on the data that you collect, you can have a kind of risk score. For example, in this box, if you have a distance less than 6 feet to someone, here is in 1 meter, and longer than 15 minutes, duration of your contact, then it could be an indication of a high risk score. So what is the challenge here actually? Okay, you use the Bluetooth technology. In China, they have done it very successfully. In Singapore, they have done it successfully, and in Korea. But what is the problem? So the challenge that we were facing in Europe and also in the US, particularly in many Western countries, was the fact that privacy plays an important role. Because whatever you put, contact tracing can be used for surveillance. And depending on what kind of data you collect, it could be location, it could be date and time, and a number of countries have already used that. There are many examples of that. And of course, more and more personal data. So for example, all these data have been collected in the Chinese model. But we cannot apply this Chinese model in Germany because we have extremely strict regulations on privacy. So it was a huge public debate on what kind of data we should collect. And this is a challenge to see if a technology for contact tracing, and first of all, is contact tracing with technology effective from stopping or let's say reducing the impact of pandemic. This is the first question. The second question is what kind of data I collect, and who can be harmed by collecting this data. And the problem is that if once the technology is, because of this crisis, is installed, many governments, even in democratic countries, they do not change it. That means the pandemic is over, let's say, the technology remains and can be used, misused for many other things. So in this context, it is important to point out that there are different approaches to realize or implement this contact tracing with, for example, based on Bluetooth. Either centralized approach or decentralized. Centralized approach means that one party has control over all the information. It can link and correlate data. And in decentralized is a different concept where each party has his or her own control over the information. Of course, decentralized from the security and privacy point of view, decentralized approaches are more popular because they can be used to construct systems that have sophisticated privacy guarantees. Whereas in centralized, although it is possible to do that, it is less flexible regarding these kind of security. For example, you can share data among mistrusting parties in a, so to say, privacy preserving way rather than a centralized system. So now I would like to introduce to you Trace Corona. This is a system, a decentralized privacy preserving and of course secure system, because even a contact tracing scheme should consider the security aspects, not only the privacy aspects, to prevent misuse, also with regard to adversaries to security of the systems. And before I explain the very high level overview of the scheme, I would like to mention to you what are our goals and design decisions that made it a bit more challenging than just collecting all the data. So of course we need to use a kind of tracing algorithms and cryptographic algorithms, but we want to have it state of the art. So that means from the security point of view, that is very important that we use advanced algorithms that can provide us with the guarantees that we require. It should work on different devices. It should be flexible design, because you may have requirements on privacy, in some regions less, and in some regions more. So it would be very nice to have from zero privacy to full anonymity. And we were interested to see if it works in practice with having prototypes. Another requirement was, can we have this system on devices where we are agnostic to operating system? We are not really dependent, fully dependent on Google and Apple, especially that. So, and this is my last design decisions, that independency was very important for us. So we wanted to have a social impact. We wanted to help. We didn't want to start from the commercial point of view as it was in many other countries. So this is important, that we have independent experts working on these problems. So now I come to Trace Corona as a privacy-preserving contact tracing scheme. One of the, I just mentioned two phases here, very high level. So first of all, how is the contact established? So when Alice and Bob meet somewhere, or they are close to each other, then, and they both of them have installed our system on their, for example, mobile phones, then there will be a kind of key exchange between, actually it's the encounter token as we call it, and this is a cryptographic key and completely random. And it cannot be in the sense that you can generate it yourself. So it has a very high, it has the security of the most advanced cryptographic systems. And if there is a critical situation, for example, Bob is tested positive because first he has symptoms and then he goes to a doctor, then Bob enters, so to say, his the test result, that means positive, into the app. And then the app, as you can see here, maybe I show it here, you can see it puts the status of infected, and then all the encounter tokens that Bob has collected during the contacts with other people are uploaded to the cloud, and all other users of the same system, that means Trace Corona, they regularly download these encounter tokens. And if there is a match, then we know that this person, Alice, has a kind of exposure and should take actions. Isolate herself, go to a medical expert, to her trusted doctor, or contact a hotline. That is, for example, the case in some countries. Then what are the privacy guarantees that we can give with the system? If we want to have a full privacy, no personal information is needed because you just download the app and that's it. Server has no knowledge of user's identity, so the cloud doesn't know who is who. It just relays the tokens because the server can reach all other phones. Users get no personal information about other users because users themselves have control over their own information. There are no pseudonyms used because if you use a pseudonym can be the same during a certain period of time, and then you can link these pseudonyms together. And the encounter tokens that are exchanged between the people who are close by are stored only on mobile phones. And here, with these encounter tokens, we can include and reveal lots of metadata. So the privacy is scalable. If we want to GPS, like some organizations want or some countries want, we can include GPS. If we don't want it, we leave it out. What is about security? The communication and data are encrypted. Exposure can be verified. That means if you claim that you have encounter with an infected person, this claim can be verified. It's very important to prevent fraud. And if the phone is hacked, you just have access to random numbers and you don't know whom these random numbers belong to. So, but what are the problems actually with all these systems that are based on smartphones, especially the national and state solutions that we have seen so far, is that they are inconvenient for many other scenarios, like schools, corporations who want to have control over who is going to, how they manage the quarantining or how they manage the isolation, beaches and events and other places where you can have your own tracing to take care of people. And it's also easier because the information that you get at the national level is not really helpful. We see it in experiments that people are doing now in different countries. So smartphones also have a problem. They are not always carried on people. We have problems with applications running in background, for example, with iOS. And mobile OS vendors like Google and Apple, they really want to dominate in this area and kill the innovation. Sorry to say that, this is what we are observing. What is the challenge? The challenge is, how can we have an effective and affordable contact tracing that organizations can use independently? Schools can use it for themselves. Especially the effectivity is here very important, beside the fact that we need to be affordable. So here I come to the part where Farinaz, my colleague, is going to talk about it in depth, but here is, we would like to go beyond tracing physical proximity, because there are studies, there is research out there in the last year, in the last months, and also in the context of other pandemic or other diseases, that smart bands, wristbands, are devices that can reveal or can deliver data that are indicating some signs of the disease together with physical proximity. So this is a kind of early response to many of different signs that people, the researchers have found in the context of pandemics. And what are the advantages of smart bands? They are convenient to use. You can have it at sport. Small kids can have it. You can go and swim. They are affordable because they cost between the things that we are talking about. They are between $30 to $40. They can provide additional physiological data, as I mentioned, and Farinaz is going to talk about it more. And the market here is very diverse. So it is open room for innovation, and nobody's there are not two big IT companies dominating here. So you can of course use it in many other application areas, like supermarkets, like exhibitions, like stadiums, gyms, and factories and hospitals. So you can have your own solution. Let me consider some facts here regarding two use cases that are coming from US, because these numbers are especially very big in US. In 2016, this is the data that we have from National Center for Education and Statistics, around 57 million students went to school. And around 85 million attendees were in conferences, conventions, and trade shows. So we as academia are really suffering because we cannot go to our conferences and do our intellectual acrobatics with our colleagues. So this is a sad story actually for us, but it is much sadder for people who get sick. And if you see that these numbers, then you can see the potential of testing our ideas. So I would like to concentrate on use case schools. I don't believe that kid zoom, or kid zooming as I call it, is possible. It's very difficult to put kids in Zoom so that they can learn something. Of course, there are experiments, but this is a big challenge. Now, one possibility is that when the kids go to school, and of course, there are also other precautions that we need to take care of. It's not just you have a smart band and everything is solved. There are a number of other factors, but just in a simplified scenario, if they have our system on their wristbands or on smart bands, then we can measure all kind of parameters like distance and time, but also a number of physiological parameters. And then when these encounter tokens include all these data, not only we can have a kind of first, this was an early response to possible signs, but also we can collect this data on this smart band, and these are uploaded to the smartphone that is under control of parents or school advisor, or it's a device at the entrance of the school. And then, as I mentioned before, if there is a match, or if there's an early sign because of the provided physiological data, then we can react and call it exposure, or include that in the risk analysis, saying that this kid has a higher risk to get sick than the other one. So now this contact tracing is actually not new. It's a actually very old idea, but now we are using it in the same context of pandemic, but you can use it as a service as well. So there are a number of emerging markets, like, for example, contact establishment at conferences and conventions, and then connect it to a messaging service that connects you only to those people you had encounters with. For example, I meet a number of people at the big conventions and I forget their names and their cards and other things. Or you can use contact establishment for advertisement. If you are at a booth in a convention and you are more than 10 or 15 minutes there, then you can get an encrypted message only to you, and the whole convention organizers don't know about it. So if you go to conventions, you will see that they just scan your badge and they have a lot of information about you. So this is what maybe you don't want it, you just want to have contact to this specific company. So what are the next steps for us? So I just explained to you how we came from a solution within the pandemic context to a solution that we think is much more practical, and it has much more fine-grained data, like physiological data, to a smart band solutions. And we started to, of course, look for smart band OEMs, and we hope that within this webinar we can we have you know, we got your attention, and if you are an OEM or you know OEMs who are interested in our ideas, and we have many other ideas that are, of course, of commercial potential as well, we would like to talk to you. Of course, we are active in this area, but it would be very nice to have a partner in US, because in US the problem is the most challenging currently. And we are also looking for interesting use cases like schools, corporations, and etc. And San Diego, because this is a beautiful place, and it is in California, and we have very good relation to UC San Diego. So it would be nice to have it in San Diego as well. So with the help of some of our partners, we got at this attention. Our attention was to that this student forums that are willing to help us to define different use cases and scenarios. But of course, we are trying to work with them in a way that we can test this technology and see how effective it is, because it's affordable. It is, we think it is effective, but we also want to see it in real world situation. And of course, it would be great if we find other schools who are willing to start with the test as soon as they are available for our technology. So if you are interested in what I mentioned now, and about all these apps, comparison of different apps and how they work, what are the problems beyond the scope of technology, because technology is only a small part here. There are many other factors that we have to take care of. Look at our webpage, tracecorona.net. You will find all the information there. Please be a bit patient, because it's a very active area. We try to be as much as possible, as fast as possible, put the information on the webpage. Please look at it, and if you have questions, you can always contact myself or my team. So now, thank you very much. This is my part, and I'm just passing it to Rory.
Wow, thank you. Before we begin the next slide deck, I've got some show and tell here. As you can see, we've got the bands. They actually exist. This is a product that is not rocket science to create. If you can create a mobile phone, the smartphone of today, that's orders and orders of magnitude more complicated than this and more expensive, we can do this. So there's hardware solutions out there. We're talking about those today. This is just one solution. I'm wearing it myself. So let's begin with our next professor, Farinaz. Please begin.
So I stop sharing.
Yes.
So
Hi, good morning, everyone. I've just been waiting for Ahmad to stop sharing so I can
I
start
stopped sharing. I stopped sharing.
Yes, yes. And I hope you can see mine now. Okay, thank you, Rory, and thanks, Ahmad, for the great intro and, motivating everyone why we need the system and what are the challenges in building the system. I want to just talk a little bit more about the physiological side and how combining the physiology with contact actually helps with detection and the prevention of the disease spread. What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to be a little bit more specific about the physiological and patterns, and I will talk about how important they are in this whole ecosystem for making a safer environment for everyone to act normally as we would in the old normal, or get used to the new normal. The physiological markers and tracing of the physiological marker is a market that is actually growing in the world. For example, in the United States itself, 1 in 5 adults use a mobile health app or a wearable device across various demographics, which is really interesting. A lot of these apps are usually just used by teenagers, but it seems like the health tracing apps are also very popular with mid-age, even old age users, and so this is actually promising because this is something we want to make sure that across all demographies, and in particular in demographies that have more prone to have fatality because of this disease, they are able to use this app. And this is of course projected to grow as in the coming years. And there are, as Ahmed mentioned, there are various OEMs, and the numbers are growing. And as the time goes by, they are developing more capabilities at a more cost-effective, a cost-effective solution, which all really great news for what we are trying to do. And for so far, the most common studied markers and patterns from our very comprehensive study of this market has been the physical activities in heart rate monitoring. Basically, these are the the indicators for heart diseases and for fitnesses. A lot of people are into getting more physical activity, for example, like how much they have walked or what is their heart rate, kind of actually like the sport test, like when you go to a cardiologist, the cardiologist, and they take a stress test from you. So basically, these are kind of indicator of where you are trying to enhance the capabilities of your system, and when are you stressing your system. So try to kind of push the boundaries between the two. And now the question is, can tracing the physiological markers and patterns could be also useful for respiratory diseases such as flu or COVID? Let me just, tell you about the state of the art and what research tells us about this. So the most visible project is next door to us in Scripps. There is a study called the Tech. It's an app-based study in partnership with Carevolution, and the results with 47,000 users has shown that heart rate monitoring and sleeping above a certain threshold has been a good indicator for some of the respiratory diseases. Now, of course, the limitation of this study is that it's very, very limited to expensive, very costly devices. They're just studying a very limited, population, and they are not taking into account several other physiological markers that could be integrated for enhancing this study. There are other limited usages of bands today, but they're not really using it the way we've envisioned it, or we're envisioning it. There is some studies where they are using some of these bands for social distancing, or they need some external readers, such as the readers you get when you go to a Walt Disney World. They're trying to use those, but those are really not scalable. We've looked into those solutions. Those are really not scalable and not useful if you're talking about a cost-effective solution that could scale to various environments and companies, and also could be used even by little kids. There are devices that try to do some limited physiological tracing, but again, these are very limited, very costly, and not very scalable to the solutions we've been looking at. So what we came up with is, we really need to change this market. We really need to change the face of how this is being done and how this is being implemented, making it scalable, making it use, and it's not just limited to a limited group of people, or the certain individuals with advantages over others. So what is it that we really need to study for a respiratory disease relevant patterns? We looked, and we actually have collaborators across, the medical field, where we look into the respiratory disease medical patterns. And, these are common COVID symptoms. You probably have all seen this, but there is, one reason I'm putting this, into two columns, and one is adults and one is children, and that is, several studies have shown that the patterns that are shown in, or the order of the patterns that are shown in adults encountering the disease is actually different than the order of the patterns that are shown in the children that are encountering the disease. So we've been actually very conscious of this, and we've been taking this into account in combining and in tracing these devices. And for example, kids have a lot more activities than adults. They jump, they go on the trampoline, they go to the park, they do various things. So what you actually see in terms of the patterns in adults, we have actually looked into baselines of how these are different and how diseases impact those differences, and how the different symptoms are actually showing in different age groups, which will be really a clue into tracing this this disease. For example, I just give you an example. This was actually not known early in the disease phase, but now it's a pretty well-established fact that the older age of the adults who are encountering the disease, the more neurological symptoms this disease could have on their brain. So for example, if you look into the age range of 75 and above, or even 50 and to 75, they start showing 30% of the patients, they start showing more and more as we go by the age, are showing a lot of neurological symptoms. And these actually can be captured not just by sleep patterns or just the heartbeat, but these are captured by the balance in terms of walking and other things. And these are some of the details we've actually integrated within how we monitor the disease and how we determine some of the symptoms early on to detect the disease as we go forward. Patterns that we've been studying are temperature, blood oxygen level, cough and snooze, blood pressure and variation, activity patterns, and as I said, not just walking versus running versus resting, but also the really how you even walk and are being really monitored. Of course, the heart signal, and last but not least, we are also trying to use this technology as a side benefit for social distancing, and social distancing by itself is really important. I just, I'm going to review very quickly some of the ways these technologies are being integrated in these devices. As Ahmed mentioned, we are having some example devices we are working with, but we are really welcoming other OEMs and other manufacturers who are also willing to open their SDK, because we think this is a technology that could benefit everybody who has an interest in this type of studies. And the temperature, for example, most of the options that we have looked into the market, they don't really directly study or detect the temperature. There are smart rings measuring temperature available, but this was not like first option for us, because we didn't want to have 200 devices on people for different measurements. So that's kind of like really from the practical and cost point of view, we are looking into one integrated solution, and that's what helped us pick what we have picked, and we are actually looking for other platform. The blood oxygen level is another thing, which of course, this is a respiratory disease, the lung impact is, really essential. We've been looking into, the LED sensors that emit at different wavelengths, and, can be used to track blood oxygen level within a really good level of accuracy. You would be surprised that even a number of very costly devices available on the market, they still don't have this capability. And they're just working on developing this capability, and these are some of the things we actually have integrated into our device. The cough and snooze has been a different story. We've actually tried our own SDK with machine learning, our own machine learning over the SDK to try to detect that. This is something that has not again been available, but we felt it's important enough to spend some time to try to find the patterns in those. Of course, we all know as you get tired and your body encounters any disease, your sleep patterns change. The body typically, of course, needs more time to rest and to recover. And so the sleep duration, the sleep quality, and other lifestyle factors have been studied with the different bands. Again, we are looking both in establishing the baseline for the sleep, but also in changes in the sleep pattern, which is something that has been of more interest, for us. Of course, it's interesting to know that sleep apnea and disruption are also symptoms of COVID-19. The blood pressure is yet another not very widely used, feature on the wristbands, and we are actually in talk with a number of companies, including Samsung for making sure that we have this capability, and these are all going to make a difference in how well we can monitor and we can go with this. The activity patterns, again, we are looking not just into the sleep patterns, but activity patterns. We have established the baseline for the activity patterns that are different for the different ages. In particular, the kids and the adults have showed very different patterns in how they arrange their activities, and what is the normal baseline, and what are some of the red flags for each of these age ranges or each of these groups that can tell us about encountering the disease, or the how prone they are to this or other. It's not just COVID. Of course, we're entering the flu season. There are other diseases that could cause these symptoms, and we are interested in having an integrated view of the health of the individual that is trying on these devices. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that the heart signal has been, is probably one of the most popular vectors that is being studied on the various devices. This is, done by a process called photoplethysmography, which is the projection of a green light into the skin. This is a capability that several of the devices we looked at are already having. But even then, when we looked into these different devices, what was really interesting is that with what level of accuracy or with what level of resolution these devices are providing the details for us. You could go from something that could be a surrogate of an EKG to just an R to R interval of of the heartbeat, and going from just the variation, the temporal variations at a very short range into like a good spectrum of the variations shown over a longer span of the device. So this has been really interesting to see, what we need and what we want to have is a comprehensive solution that could provide both accuracy and cost effectiveness. Now, in summary, what I want to emphasize and what we have been looking at is we've been looking into physiological markers and patterns. This is a growing field, not just for COVID, but for several other diseases in studies. And it's gaining much more popularity as we go by. But it turns out these physiological markers and patterns, they also promise early COVID detection and prevention of its spread over big communities. The early studies report positive results, but in very limited settings. The limitations of the present solutions are really not making them the best solution out there for scaling to a large population. There's the cost of the wristband devices that are available for this type of studies in very limited settings. There's the scalability to a larger population, in particular the school kids who don't own mobile phone, or even an older population of people who may not know how to use their mobile phone appropriately. For example, I have downloaded several of these health apps, and several of them, they need constant reminders of how you're using it to have a good prediction of what is going on. And I think the user interfaces are really important. So making it making it something that is usable for a large portion of the population in different age ranges is something that we've actually focused and we're working on. The present solutions are often from what we have seen disintegrated from contact tracing, and there is only a couple of markers and patterns in use today. We are really hoping that this would grow and this would make a good solution, in particular for the smaller schools and the corporates that are willing to have a safe opening and going back to a new normal. Our ongoing work in collaboration with Ahmad, and of course, with the support of EvoNexus and other parties involved, is to come up with scalable and cost-effective devices that integrate contact tracing and social distancing technologies with several new biomarkers and pattern recognition capabilities. Machine learning is an integral part, and we've actually been working hard on developing some of these algorithms in the recent past. And with that, I thank you for your attention. And if there's any question, Ahmed and I would be really happy to take those.
Okay, thank you so much. That was just terrific. And we've had a lot of callers attend this from around the US and actually overseas. We've had some questions from the group, but let me ask you some questions, and I'm going to go ahead and if you could answer quickly so we can get through multiple questions. So let's start with the first question regarding my favorite topic, hardware. That's my background. Psychological tracing using smart wristbands looks like a great idea. Who do you think can provide them and guarantee their accuracy? Quick
So,
response.
shall I answer, or finance? Do you want you or you volunteer?
Ahmad, go ahead. Go ahead.
So as Farinaz said, there are a number of OEMs who are producing these devices. And when you talk about accuracy, it is, of course, very important. When you talk about accuracy of measuring distance or measuring the duration of contact, if this is the parameters that you are talking about, in the context of diseases, it is very important to know that if you look into the medical studies that have been done recently, but also in the past, and I learned a lot in this area, that these parameters, their accuracy, are kind of, they vary. They vary because, if, for example, if you have if you are sitting in a garden and there is a really nice wind coming and you are talking to someone, the probability of having drops in the air of that contains the virus is much less than when you are in closed rooms. So distance and the accuracy of distance and time, the time is of course very important, but there are a number of corner cases that you need to catch up after you see the high risk. So I think these devices are very interesting for giving to you an indication of there is a high risk, and there is a early recognition or early notice of this high risk, as Farin has mentioned. We don't want perfect accuracy, but of course there are OEMs who have already done studies with lots of medical data, as Farin has mentioned, and we trust that these companies know what they are doing, at least, especially in the startup scene. There are a number of them.
Farinaz, any short comment to follow that?
No, I think, Ahmad kind of covered, what I wanted to cover. I don't think, there is, going to be.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on real quick here. Bands typically use Bluetooth Low Energy for communications with a host device, often a smartphone. In elementary school trial, how to make sure from the band is accurate and timely downloaded from the band, schools would not have control of parents and guardians' smartphones? So this is really a can of worms kind of response question here, but short answer real quick.
Okay, Farinaz, do you want to go?
I didn't hear the question as the voice got disconnected. To save time, could you answer? I'll try. I promise to answer the next one because I really didn't hear half of the question.
So can you repeat the question? I just okay, I heard most of it, but not at the end.
All right. In an elementary school trial, how to make sure from the band that the band is accurately and timely downloaded. Schools cannot control parents or the guardian's smartphones.
Oh yes, oh yes. Okay, so this is a very justified question, and the simplest way to do that is what we call the daily keys. So that means you have you collect all these encounter data that these devices collect during the day. And then when you go home, the parents, or when the school has kind of the authority to collect this data on a for example, a tablet or on a customized or a specific device that is made for that, depending on how, because the data is anonymous anyway. You can of course make it non-anonymous, but they are not going to be able to misuse the data. So during the day, kids are at school, they collect this data, they go home, and they upload it to the smartphone of the parents, because parents should have the control over that. The small kids may not may be able to upload it, But of course, the precondition is that parents know about all these apps and how to upload, how to sync it with the smart band. If they know it, then parents have the control over this data. So it's on a daily basis, and this is also how other schemes work. So daily basis is the best way.
Okay, that's a good answer. Let's move on to something else here. We've got a question from the Silicon Valley, Tom Dingen, and let's move out of education just for a moment, and let's talk about other areas that are being hammered because of contact tracing, health clubs, open areas. What's the challenge you would have to take this Fitbit type of band, and health clubs use it to assist in them reopening? Quick answers.
I think for me, it's not a challenge, but it's fun. We really are looking for test beds to try these different things, because, one thing is, the reason we mentioned schools is that, a number of schools have expressed interest, and we're in contact with them on how we could use this technology for safe reopening of the schools. One of the intents of this talk has been, for us to introduce this technology to interested parties, and in particular places that could benefit from this, to go back to a new normal. So definitely, this is something, I could stay, I'm an academician, I can stay in my room all day and theorize about like how things work, but, there's nothing like, getting your hands dirty into the little details of the practice and seeing how well this technology is helping, and having this proof of concept is really what we are looking for. Ahmed, are you having anything else to add?
No, I think I completely agree with you, and this is exactly why we are giving this talk, because we want people, especially from Silicon Valley, to work with us, to have nice ideas and scenarios that we can put this technology in it and we can share with them. Is no problem.
Okay, thank you. Another question here, real quick, from the group here. When do we consider a wristband to be successful? And let's take a school environment.
So, Farinaz, you have kids. Maybe you start.
Okay, well, for me, of course, big deal has been how do we go back to, go out of this new normal of everybody at home to, to a better normal. But, there are many different use cases. There are use cases, we've been in contact since early days with hospital officials who have COVID patients who actually need to monitor them as they go home. So that has been, one vector we've actually looked at, and a few of our collaborators in the medical school actually have implemented that already, have shown a lot of promising results. Not everything is published, it takes like trials and more time for, in particular, for people who deal with human subjects to try to summarize the study and have a good enough population to present. But, I can tell you there has been several success stories along those lines. In terms of the schools, I think, if we can show, like you have all seen what happened, for example, with UNC Chapel Hill this week. They opened the school, they tried to have in-person classes, and within 1 week, they had 130 new cases of COVID and had to close and move everything back online. So the force major for doing this has not been, an authority coming and saying you should close or you should open. The force major was really the spread of the disease. So I think, when we can safely say this is working is where we can show success stories, how this technology has been able to keep down or keep low the incidence of this disease. I think the metrics are pretty obvious. If you ask like, Georgia Tech, I don't know, or UNC Chapel. And there's a lot of debate in Georgia Tech. That's why I'm mentioning that about opening. But if you ask UNC Chapel Hill two weeks ago what they think, they will have a lot of reasons why they want to open it, and this and that. But the reality of it is that the metrics that we use, which is really the health of the individuals, could not be satisfied. So the game was over. I think the same thing will happen. Like if you're talking about success story, we have to think about how this level of the disease is going to die in the society. So hopefully, like as we went up the curve, we will come down the curve and we will defeat it. Ahmed?
I think we're out of time here, but let's stay on track. I'm gonna give you an old guide that was restaurants still to use to this day. Restaurants use this to this day. No shirt, no shoes, no service. And that's what happens in a restaurant. No shirt, no shoes, no service. We've got to be more regimented in this. That's my comment. No shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. So I think it starts with discipline. It starts with everyone understanding the emergency situation we're in. We're in a pandemic, but that's no different than a war. And in wars, everyone rallies to win. So we've got a situation where we've all got to get behind intelligent solutions. They're going to come from startups. They're going to come from large companies. They're going to come from research. But we have a real urgency here, a sense of urgency, and we can't let politics jump in the middle of this. So thank you for everybody for joining. It's been my honor to be on this webinar. Thank you, Futurewei, for helping us organize this. And we've kept your questions. If we have your email address, we'll answer your questions. And again, everyone, thanks for joining this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory, for organizing, and thanks for everyone for your interest.
And you can always send us questions, whatever questions you have. We're happy to answer it.